The ground shakes before I even open my eyes. Dust falls from a cracked ceiling somewhere above me, and my ears are ringing so loud I cannot tell if the alarms are still sounding, or if that sound is only inside my own head. My name is Maya Clark, and the last thing I remember clearly is the drop pod spinning out of control, throwing me somewhere far from where I was supposed to land. I push myself up on one arm. Pain shoots through my leg, sharp and immediate, and I grit my teeth instead of making a sound. Somewhere close, metal groans under its own weight, shifting, settling. I am inside what used to be a control room. Now it is a broken shell of scorched metal and shattered glass, and I am the only living thing in it. My comm unit crackles once, then goes silent. No signal, no squad, no backup. Just me, a cracked rifle, and a body that feels like it has been through a storm. I force myself to focus. Panic will not help me here. I check my rifle first, because a soldier without a working weapon is already halfway to being a soldier who does not make it home. The barrel is bent, useless. I drop it and search the wreckage around me instead, moving slowly, listening for any sound that does not belong to settling debris. That is when I hear voices. Not human voices. A clicking, layered kind of speech that comes from somewhere close, maybe just beyond the collapsed wall to my left. My heart pushes hard against my ribs. I press myself flat against the cold floor and wait, counting my own breaths to keep them quiet. The voices pass, then fade. I let out the breath I had been holding, and allow myself exactly 3 seconds to think. I am behind enemy lines, in the middle of what is very clearly an important command post, without a working weapon, without contact with my unit, and with a leg that is not going to carry me very far if I do not deal with it soon. I tear a strip of fabric from my sleeve and tie it tight around the wound. It is not pretty, but it slows the bleeding enough to let me move. I crawl toward a gap in the far wall where daylight, or whatever passes for daylight on this world, is leaking through in a thin gray line. Outside, the scene stretches wider than I expected. Towers of dark metal rise into a sky heavy with smoke. Walkers, tall mechanical war machines, stand scattered across the open ground, some active, some clearly damaged from whatever battle brought my pod down here in the first place. This is not a small outpost. This is a command center, and command centers are never left undefended. I need a weapon. I need information. Most of all, I need a plan, because standing here doing nothing is the fastest way to end up as another statistic in someone else's report. I spot a fallen soldier near the base of the nearest walker, its armor scorched, unmoving. Beside it lies a long device, sleek and unfamiliar. Clearly some kind of energy weapon built for hands very different from mine. I do not know how to use it, but I know how to learn quickly, because that is something every recon soldier is trained to do the moment their original plan falls apart. I crawl toward it, keeping low, using broken machinery as cover. My leg protests every movement, but I push the pain aside and focus only on the next few meters. When I reach the weapon, I turn it over in my hands, studying the grip, the trigger mechanism, the small glowing indicator along its side. There is no manual. There is no time. I press the trigger once, aimed at a piece of broken metal, and the weapon responds with a burst of light and a low hum. It works. That is all I need to know. A shout rises from somewhere behind me, sharp and alarmed. They have found the gap where I came through. I do not wait to see how many there are. I move, dragging my injured leg, ducking behind the twisted frame of a damaged walker. My mind works fast, faster than fear can catch up to. I remember something from my training, something about how disciplined forces often follow patterns, timing their movements in predictable cycles. If I can figure out their rhythm, I can use the gaps between their advances to stay ahead of them. I press my back against cold metal and count. One movement, a pause, another movement. 9 seconds between each burst of activity from the nearest active walker. I use that information immediately, slipping from one position to another, exactly when the machine's attention shifts elsewhere. It works, but only for a while. More soldiers pour into the courtyard, moving with the kind of coordinated discipline that tells me this is not a random patrol. This is a defense force protecting something important, and I have stumbled directly into the middle of it. I duck into what remains of a storage structure, its walls half collapsed, offering just enough cover to catch my breath. My leg is worse now, throbbing with every heartbeat. I press my hand against the wound and force myself to think clearly, instead of letting exhaustion take over. There has to be a way through this. There always is. I just have to find it before they find me first. I peer through a crack in the wall and see them lining up in formation, methodical, patient, completely unafraid of a single injured intruder. It should terrify me more than it does. Instead, something else rises inside me, something steady and quiet that refuses to let fear make my decisions for me. I remember every drill, every simulation, Every moment my instructors told me that the mind is often a soldier's most important weapon. I do not have numbers on my side. I do not have backup, but I have information, timing, and a stubborn refusal to give up before I absolutely have to. I wait until their formation shifts, watching the pattern of their movement one more time, memorizing the gaps between each advance. Then I move again, slipping past their perimeter, drawing their attention away from the wounded soldiers still trapped somewhere behind me, that I have not even seen yet. Soldiers who might still need rescue, if I can hold this position long enough for support to arrive. Hours pass. I do not know exactly how many, because time stops meaning much once your body runs on nothing but adrenaline and stubbornness. I disable one walker using its own damage systems against it, finding a weak point in its armor plating that I would never have noticed if I had not spent the last several minutes studying its every movement. Another falls when I redirect its own targeting system using a data terminal I find half buried in rubble, my hands shaking as I input commands I am only partly sure will work. Every small success costs me something. My leg barely holds my weight now. My arms ache from constant tension, my throat is dry, and my canteen has been empty for what feels like forever. But every time I think about stopping, I think about my unit, still out there somewhere, maybe still fighting, maybe still counting on the possibility that someone made it through. I am not ready to be the reason that hope disappears. The soldiers change their approach as their numbers thin. They stop rushing forward and instead begin closing in slowly, carefully, clearly realizing that whatever they are dealing with is not simply going to run out of luck on its own. I retreat deeper into the ruined command post, using every piece of broken machinery as cover, every gap in the walls as an escape route. At one point, I find myself trapped in a narrow corridor with soldiers approaching from both directions. My mind races through every possible option in the space of a single heartbeat. I spot a maintenance hatch above me, barely wide enough to fit through, and force my exhausted body upward, ignoring the scream of pain from my leg as I pull myself into the narrow space just as the soldiers reach the corridor below. I hold my breath, pressed flat against cold metal, listening to their voices pass beneath me. When they move on, I allow myself a moment, just one, to close my eyes and steady my racing heart before continuing forward. This is not how I imagined my first deployment going, but nothing about war ever goes the way anyone imagines it. Eventually, I reach what looks like the heart of the command post, a wide open space surrounded by tall spires of dark metal, still standing despite the damage all around them. This is clearly the center of whatever operation is based here, and standing at the far end of that open space is a figure unlike any of the soldiers I have encountered so far. Taller, more elaborately armored, surrounded by a group of guards who move with the kind of precision that speaks of years, maybe decades, of discipline. I do not need anyone to tell me who this is. Something in the way every other soldier around her moves, the way their formations shift to keep her protected above all else, tells me exactly what I am looking at. This is their leader. I press myself against a broken pillar, weighing my options. I could retreat. I could try to disappear back into the wreckage and wait for extraction, assuming extraction ever comes. But something stops me. Some quiet certainty that if I turn back now, whatever chance I have of ending this confrontation on my own terms disappears with me. I step out from behind the pillar. The guards react instantly, weapons rising, voices sharp with alarm. I raise my hands slowly, showing that I am not immediately reaching for anything, even though the weapon I found earlier is still gripped tightly enough that I could use it in a heartbeat if I had to. The leader raises a hand, and her guards go still, though their weapons remain trained on me. She studies me for a long moment, tilting her head slightly, the same kind of curious assessment you might give something unexpected and slightly out of place. When she speaks, her voice carries through some kind of translation device, flat but clear. "What is your designation, soldier?" I almost laugh, except laughing feels like it might use up the very last bit of energy I have left. Instead, I answer honestly, because at this point, honesty feels like the only thing I have left to offer. "Corporal," I say. "That is all you need to know." "That is a rank," she replies. "I asked for a name." I hesitate, studying her expression, trying to read intentions I have no real way of understanding. But something in her posture does not suggest immediate hostility. If she wanted me gone, her guards would have already acted. "Maya Clark," I say finally. "2nd Recon Division." She studies me for a long moment, then glances briefly toward the wreckage scattered across the courtyard, the disabled walkers, the fallen soldiers, all the evidence of the hours I have spent surviving inside her own command post. "You have caused significant damage here," she says. "I did what I had to do to stay alive," I answer honestly. "I did not come here looking for a fight. I was separated from my unit and ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time. And yet you continued fighting, even when retreat might have seemed the wiser choice. I think about that question for a moment before answering. Retreating never really felt like an option, not because I am fearless, because I am far from that, but because giving up has never been something that came naturally to me, no matter how impossible the situation looks. Where I come from, I say, we are taught that giving up costs more in the long run than the effort it takes to keep going, even when everything says we should stop. Something shifts in her expression, subtle but unmistakable, something that might, in a different kind of being, be called quiet respect. She turns to her guards and I brace myself, uncertain what comes next. But instead of ordering them forward, she raises her own hand in a gesture I do not recognize, something formal, something deliberate. One by one, down the line, every soldier standing in that courtyard mirrors the gesture, weapons lowering, postures shifting into something that looks unmistakably like respect rather than hostility. I stand there, exhausted, wounded, completely unsure what is happening, but sensing that whatever line existed between us only a few minutes ago has shifted into something entirely different. You will be remembered here, she says, as one who does not break, even when everything around her says that breaking would be the easier choice. I do not entirely understand the full weight of her words, not in that moment, but something in the way every soldier around her holds that same posture tells me this is not a small gesture. This is something rare, something that does not happen often, if ever, in a place like this. A distant sound catches my attention, faint at first, then growing steadily louder, a familiar hum that sends a wave of relief through my exhausted body. My extraction shuttle, finally arriving, cutting through the smoke-filled sky toward the courtyard where I stand. The leader steps back, gesturing for her guards to lower their weapons completely, allowing a clear path toward the open ground where the shuttle begins its descent. Go, she says. Your people are waiting. I hesitate for just a moment, uncertain what to say, uncertain if there is anything appropriate to say in a moment like this. In the end, I settle for the simplest response I can offer. Thank you, I say, and mean it more than I expected to. She does not respond with words, but the gesture she offers, a slight incline of her head, feels like answer enough. I move toward the shuttle as quickly as my injured leg allows, every step feeling heavier than the last, exhaustion finally catching up to me now that the immediate danger has passed. The shuttle door opens before I even reach it, familiar hands reaching out to help me aboard, familiar voices calling my name with a mixture of relief and disbelief. As the shuttle lifts off, I glance back through the small viewport at the courtyard below, at rows of soldiers who spent hours trying to end my life now standing in silent formation, watching my departure with something that looks remarkably like respect. I do not know what will come of this moment in the days ahead, what it might mean for the larger conflict still unfolding across worlds I have only begun to understand, but I know that whatever happens next, I made it through the kind of night that changes something inside a person permanently, the kind of experience that either breaks you completely or leaves you standing a little steadier than before. I choose to believe it is the second one. The medic on board reaches my side almost immediately, already assessing the wound on my leg, already reaching for supplies to stabilize me for the journey back. I let my head fall back against the seat, finally allowing my body to feel every bit of exhaustion I had been holding back for hours. Someone asks me what happened down there, disbelief clear in their voice as they take in the scale of destruction visible even from the air. I do not have a complete answer, not yet, not one that fully makes sense of everything that happened in that courtyard. All I know is that somewhere below us, an entire battalion stood in silent respect for a soldier who never meant to become anyone's story, who simply refused to stop when every reasonable option said that stopping made sense. Maybe that is enough of an answer for now. As the shuttle carries me further from that battlefield, I close my eyes and let myself rest for the first time in what feels like days, carrying with me the memory of a leader who asked for a name, and an entire formation of soldiers who chose, in that single unexpected moment, to answer with something other than violence. Whatever comes next, I know I will carry that moment with me for a very long time.